making a mockery of the voters that put their trust in you at the general election? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beth. I will.
Starmer and Reeves income tax U-turn. So, Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer just ripped up their plans to raise income tax. And if you're thinking, oh brilliant, they've decided not to pick our pockets after all, I've got some absolutely devastating news for you. This isn't a U-turn, this is a magic trick where they make the rabbit disappear from one hat, only to pull it out of another hat that you weren't watching. And the rabbit? That's your money. Welcome to the Labour government's latest masterclass in saying one thing, doing another, and somehow making it look like they're doing you a favour in the process. Right, let's set the scene because this story has more layers than an onion wrapped in red tape and dipped in political spin. Rachel Reeves, our esteemed Chancellor of the Exchequer, has been running around for weeks like someone trying to find 30 billion quid down the back of the sofa. That's the fiscal hole she supposedly discovered, though frankly at this point the term fiscal hole has been used so many times it's lost all meaning. It's become the political equivalent of the dog ate my homework, except the dog is the Conservatives and the homework is a functioning economy. Now, earlier reports suggested Reeves was seriously considering breaking a key Labour manifesto pledge by hiking income tax rates. The basic rate and the higher rate were both on the chopping block, or rather the raising block, because apparently when you promise not to do something in your manifesto, that's just a suggestion rather than an actual commitment. Who knew manifestos were basically just Pinterest boards of political ideas you might get around to if it's convenient? Hiking the basic rate could have raised somewhere between 15 and 20 billion pounds, which sounds like a lot, until you remember they need 30 billion, at which point you realise they'd still be 10 to 15 billion short, and we'd all be paying more tax for the privilege of still being broke. It's like being told you need to pay more for a gym membership that doesn't actually have any working equipment. But here's where it gets properly interesting, because according to the Financial Times, Starmer and Reeves have now ripped up these plans. Ripped him up? That's quite dramatic language, isn't it? It conjures images of the Prime Minister and Chancellor standing in number 10, physically tearing apart policy documents, like they're in some sort of political remake of The Devil Wears Prada. Income tax rises? Groundbreaking. Rip, tear, dramatically toss in the bin. So you might be thinking, right, well that's good news then. They've backed down, they've listened to people's concerns, they've realised that hammering working people with higher taxes isn't exactly in line with their whole Party of Working People brand. And if you're thinking that, congratulations, you've fallen for exactly what they want you to think. Because here's the twist that should surprise absolutely nobody who's been paying attention to British politics for more than 5 minutes. They haven't actually abandoned the plan to get more money from income tax. They've just decided to do it in a sneakier way that technically doesn't break their manifesto promise, while absolutely breaking the spirit of their manifesto promise. It's like promising your partner you won't eat the last biscuit, and then eating all the other biscuits and leaving them with just one. Technically you kept your promise, but you're still a monster. The new plan, if the reports are accurate, involves messing with the thresholds at which people pay different rates of income tax. So instead of raising the actual rates, they're going to lower the point at which you start paying those rates. The headline numbers stay the same, which means they can stand up in Parliament and say, we didn't raise income tax rates, while simultaneously ensuring more people pay more tax. It's political sleight of hand at its finest, and it would be impressive if it wasn't so utterly infuriating. Let me break this down with an analogy because this is the kind of thing that sounds complicated, but is actually devastatingly simple once you understand it. Imagine you go to your favourite coffee shop, and they promise they won't raise the price of a large latte. Great news, right? Except then they redefine what counts as a large latte. What used to be large is now extra large and costs more, and what's now called large is actually what used to be medium. The price of a large latte hasn't changed, but you're getting less coffee for your money or paying more for the same amount. That's essentially what's happening here, except instead of coffee, it's your entire financial future. The other option being floated is extending the freeze on income tax thresholds beyond 2028. Now, this might sound boring and technical, but it's actually one of the most insidious forms of taxation ever invented, because most people don't even realize it's happening. It's called fiscal drag, which sounds like something from a particularly tedious economics textbook, but is actually a stealth tax that hits you harder the longer it goes on. Here's how fiscal drag works. Income tax thresholds are supposed to rise with inflation, so as wages go up to match rising prices, you're not automatically pushed into higher tax brackets just because everything costs more. But when the government freezes those thresholds, your wages might go up with inflation, but the tax brackets don't. So you end up paying a higher percentage of your income in tax, not because the tax rates changed, but because the thresholds didn't move while your salary did. It's like being on a travelator at the airport. You're walking forward, trying to make progress, but the floor is moving you backward at the same time. You're putting in effort, you're moving your legs, you might even be going slightly forward, but you're certainly not getting ahead as fast as you should be. That's fiscal drag in a nutshell, and it's absolutely brilliant for governments, because it raises billions in extra revenue while letting them claim they haven't raised taxes. The Conservatives started this particular freeze back in the day, and it was supposed to end in 2028, but now Labour's looking at extending it, because apparently when your political opponents do something that's unpopular but effective at raising money, the correct response isn't to reverse it, but to embrace it and make it even worse. It's like inheriting a leaky roof, and instead of fixing it, you decide to poke more holes in it because at least that way you can say you did something. According to analysis from wealth management firm Quilter, and you know when the wealth management people are issuing warnings you should probably pay attention, someone currently earning £44,000 would see their tax bill increase by £843 over the next 4 years if thresholds were frozen until 2030. That's not pocket change. That's not a rounding error. That's nearly £1,000 that could have gone towards your mortgage, your rent, your kids' school trips, your desperately needed holiday, or just the general cost of existing in Britain in 2025, when everything costs approximately 3 times what it should. And here's the really galling part, because £44,000 isn't even a particularly high salary anymore. That's not oligarch money. That's not 3 houses and a yacht money. That's probably can afford a mortgage if you don't eat out more than twice a month and your car doesn't break down. These are the working people Labour claims to represent, and they're about to get hit with an extra £800 in tax over 4 years through a mechanism most of them don't even understand. Now, Callum Pickering, who's the chief economist at investing banking firm Peel Hunt, and presumably knows what he's talking about given that's literally his job, has pointed out the obvious problem with all this. He said, ditching income tax rises is one thing, but choosing not to lower income tax thresholds would leave the Chancellor with limited alternatives, which is economist speak for, if you don't do the sneaky threshold thing, you're going to have to find 30 billion quid somewhere else, and good luck with that. Because here's the fundamental problem that nobody in government wants to acknowledge. They need £30 billion. That money has to come from somewhere. You can't just wish it into existence, although given some of the economic policies we've seen over the years, it's clear that several chancellors have tried. So if you're not going to raise income tax rates, and you're not going to mess with the thresholds, where exactly do you find £30 billion? You could cut spending, but that's political suicide because every pound of government spending is someone's essential service or someone else's job or someone's grandmother's heating allowance. You could borrow more, but the bond markets are already giving the UK the side eye, like we're that friend who keeps asking to borrow 20 quid and never pays it back. You could raise other taxes, but we've already got some of the highest tax burdens in decades, and there's only so much you can squeeze out of people before they either leave the country or start a revolution. So Reeves is stuck between a rock and a hard place. Except the rock is her manifesto promises, and the hard place is economic reality, and she's trying to squeeze through a gap that doesn't actually exist. The result is this kind of policy gymnastics where they technically keep their promises while absolutely violating them in spirit. It's the political equivalent of a kid who's been told not to hit their sibling, so they start poking them instead and claiming it doesn't count. What's particularly amusing, in a dark, despairing sort of way, is the language being used here. They ripped up the plans for income tax rises. That phrasing is doing so much heavy lifting it should probably apply for workers' compensation. It's designed to make you think they've abandoned the whole idea of getting more money from income tax, when actually they've just pivoted to a different method of achieving the same goal. It's like your boss calling you into your office and saying, "Great news, we've ripped up our plans to cut your salary," and you're feeling relieved until they continue, "Instead, we're going to redefine what counts as full-time hours, so you work more for the same money, but technically, your hourly rate stays the same."